Dear colleagues, dear comrades, I hope that you were able to have a nice lunch break, put it to good use. Let us start again. I'd like to welcome Christy Hoffman, the General Secretary of Uni Global. I'd like to welcome her. Welcome to Brussels, Christy. And you'll be addressing the Congress at a later stage. We're looking forward to your contribution and we're happy that you are here. We have the chair of the Credentials Committee as well, Anna Maria Romano. I would like to ask her for the report of the Credentials Committee. Over to you, Anna Maria.
I'm going to present you the conference audience. Colleagues from 35 European countries and 6 non-European countries from 182 unions are attending the 5th Uni-Europa conference. The total number of delegates is 294, 148 are women and 146 are men. 13 are young members. Also attending are 542 observers, guests, interpreters, and staff members. 272 are women and 270 are men. 43 are young members. The total number of participants is 836. 420 are women and 416 are men. 56 are young members. In terms of gender balance, the overall participation among delegates as well as among observers and guests is very balanced. Among delegates, 50.2% are women and 99.8% are men. However, 25 unions could not comply with the 40% rule and their delegation is not gender balanced, and that despite of the virtual nature of the conference. As set out in the conference procedures, these unions will be asked to present a formal letter addressed to Uni Europa to explain the reasons why they could not fulfill this rule. We note that youth participation is below 10%, with only 4% of delegates being 35 years or younger. 20 organizations have not paid up their fees for 2020. 5 organizations are exempted from paying fees. The Credential Committee decided to give participants of unions that have not paid fees guest status. Unions correctly fulfilling payment of fees have full voting rights. I thank all the members of the Credentials Committee and Uni staff for their work and submit the report to the conference. Enjoy the conference. We need to be stronger than ever, and together we can.
Yes, thank you very much for that report from the Credentials Committee. Later on, we're going to be listening to a statement and discussing a statement on Brexit. If you wish to take the floor, please let us know by 3 p.m. CET. So the deadline for a request to speak on Brexit is 3 p.m. Central European Time. What is more, we discussed at the Executive Committee on an EU minimum wage paper that will be discussed and decided upon tomorrow. And if you wish to take the floor, on this statement, please let us know by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, Central European Time. So those were the technical announcements. We're going to step into the second part of our Congress, Forward Through Collective Bargaining is the theme. And this is mainly about motion 1A. And before we deal with that, I'd like to hand over to the Regional Secretary, Oliver Rüttig, on the report on activities, the election period, and the different lines of action that await us. Oliver, over to you.
Forward through collective bargaining is a slogan of our conference. We must defend, extend, and rebuild union power everywhere in Europe. And union power is best defined by our ability to bargain collectively. This is a key task of trade unions. Europa is in the first place about strengthening your collective bargaining power at home. It is about what we can do together to reinforce unions in dealing with factors outside the country that impact on your collective bargaining. We want every worker throughout our sectors covered by collective agreements. This is a mission of Europa. It is about working life allowing workers and their families to live in dignity. It is about the ability of workers to shape their own working lives collectively, to have a say in their workplaces. It has made the difference in the past, and it will do so in the future too. Brothers and sisters, what would happen if services workers across Europe were all covered by the best collective payment agreements in their country and sector? As our snapshot report shows, services workers would be a staggering 145 billion euros better off per year. And tax and social security contributions will increase by 108 billion euros. Yet what is the reality? Over the last decade, collective bargaining coverage has dropped substantially. What our report also shows, and this is important, the less coverage, the more downward pressure on wages, even for those workers with collective bargaining. The point is, sectoral collective bargaining is the most effective buttress against bad pay and working conditions. As workers and citizens, we all benefit from collective agreements. It is a check on equality and precarity. The drop in collective bargaining has gone hand in hand with the rich becoming ever richer. Fat Cat Day was in early January. This is a day in the year when bosses have already made as much as an ordinary worker will do over the year. Today is 27 April. By now, the big bosses in Europe have earned about the same amount this year as a median worker will in 15 years. By year end, that will be more than a lifetime pay for ordinary people. Colleagues, even though all this speaks for collective bargaining and trade unions, both are under attack, openly like in Colombia or by stealth in Europe, precisely because we are organized labor. At our last conference in 2016, we heard that the Finnish government used a sledgehammer to destroy one of the best and strongest collective bargaining systems in the world. They didn't succeed. Still, today, 5 years later, Finnish employers started their own attack, refusing first to negotiate at sectoral level and then to stop collective bargaining altogether. We will hear about this later today from our Finnish colleagues. Europa stands with you side by side in this fight. We do fight back, and we win. Only this month, Spain finally changed the law that sentenced trade unionists to prison for engaging in industrial action. Rather than criminalizing them, the EU and governments should criminalize and certainly take strong action against union busting, wage theft, treating workers as independent contractors. And good news from Ireland too. The Citizens' Assembly, a kind of constitutional convention, calls for legal right to collective bargaining in all sectors. Colleagues, the talk in town is the EU's proposal on a minimum wage. We will discuss this tomorrow. What I want to highlight is the argument of one business association, not one from our sectors. Wages, they say, are a matter for collective bargaining and there should be no interference by the EU. Well, we disagree. However, hear my invitation to them and other employers. Let's immediately get together at all levels to set fair and decent wages by collective agreement. Join us ensuring that each wage is at a minimum 60% of the average and 50% of the median of all wages. Employers, let's work together. Brothers and sisters, our role as services unions is essential. For the services sector constitutes the core of our societies and economies. Services employ 70% of all workers and generate 70% of GDP. Indeed, when we talk about Europe's future, we actually talk by and large about the services sector. Europa's approach to strengthen collective bargaining power of our affiliates has three elements. First, bottom-up organizing, building a strong membership basis that engages in trade union activities. Second, top-down, influencing EU politics, in particular to provide an enabling framework for collective bargaining. And third, engaging with multinational companies to create a negotiating environment for our affiliates. On top of that, we will continue working on cutting-edge collective bargaining issues to pool the knowledge of our affiliates and develop guidelines jointly. When we talk about organizing dimension of forward through collective bargaining, it is definitely not simply about recruiting new members. As important is to retrain members and motivate them to join trade unions activities. Over the last years, we have expanded our organizing work with our affiliates with a clear objective to defend, extend, and rebuild collective bargaining. We are not focusing on some companies or sectors. To be sustainable, we aim at sectoral collective bargaining in all sectors, in all countries, based on a strong and participative membership. Central and Eastern Europe continues to need our support and solidarity to fight in a hostile and industrial relations environment. Tomorrow, we will establish UNI's Southeast European Organizing Center. It will build on the great work our affiliates have been doing with our support in Romania, in particular in the ICTS and finance sector. They show us that sectoral collective bargaining is possible. The center will be complementing the great organizing work course the Central European Organizing Center has been doing since we founded it at our last conference in 2016. Collective bargaining is under pressure in the traditional strongholds of European trade unions too. Therefore, we set up our European Power and Organizing Center in 2019. Its primary objective is to develop lead organizers' capacity in our unions, and on top, we link their expertise through our monthly EPOC network meetings. EPOC has been so great a success that we need to see how we can put more resources into it. COVID-19 has had an impact on organizing activities. We moved to digital organizing. While face-to-face organizing cannot be replaced, working online allows us to react much quicker to events. In future, our organizing model will combine the strengths of both offline and online organizing. Thanks to all of you, Europa is in the lead on organizing in Europe. Together, we make a real difference for workers. Brothers and sisters, collective bargaining, second, needs an EU legal and political framework that enhances the ability of our affiliates to bargain collectively. The European Parliament shows the way by setting a target of reaching 90% collective bargaining coverage by 2030. Two MEPs were the driving force, Agnes Jungerius of the S&D and Dennis Radke of the EPP. They will be with us later on so that we can thank them for their assist. What we expect now is that at the Porto Summit in 2 weeks, and the Portuguese Labour Minister was referring to this, the Commission, governments, and the EP bring forward concrete legislative action to reach this goal of 90%. And the EU has much to do to compensate for its disastrous Troika policy over the last decade. In our lobbying activities here in Brussels, strengthening collective bargaining is always part of the equation. On general matters like platforms, due diligence, and European Works Councils, we work closely together with the ETUC and the other European trade union federations. We have some of my fellow general secretaries here with us. Thank you for the good cooperations and it is a pleasure for me to coordinate our work as ETUFs. Within Europa, at cross-sector level, key legislation for us has been the Digital Services Pact, Equal Pay and AI. Much of the work is done in our sectors too. The campaign against further postal liberalization, protection of self-employed workers, and financial regulation that respect finance workers, just to name a few. One success I want to highlight particularly, EU law and policies actually expanding the scope of collective bargaining. I'm talking about the Copyright Directive. We achieved to enshrine the principle of fair remuneration by collective bargaining. The first collective agreements on this have already followed in Germany and Sweden between our affiliates and Netflix. Over the next years, we will explore systematically how we can use EU legislation and policies to defend, extend, and rebuild collective bargaining. Remember our last conference in 2016? Then we did something new for trade unions in Brussels. We launched a poster campaign in metro stations, targeting the Commission directly for mocking our hairdressing social partner agreement. Well, I can tell you, we ruffled some feathers up to the very top of the Commission. We didn't make the Commission change course and legislative on our hairdressing social partner agreement, but we were successfully anyway. For the first time ever, the Commission made a commitment to join social partners in implementing an agreement. This has meant constant engagement rather than a legal text that is left to its own devices. This strengthens social dialogue and delivers for hairdressers perhaps even better than law.
Collective bargaining is crucial.
Yes, collective bargaining is crucial, but we need more than nice words. So our direct reply to President von der Leyen is go for the lowest hanging fruit and the sharpest tool. Public authorities have to promote collective bargaining. Public procurement. Public procurement means workers that generate 14% of GDP and 2 trillion euros per year. Last month, over 100 Europa trade union leaders, sent a simple request to von der Leyen. Change EU public procurement rules now. No public contracts for companies without collective agreements. We want a swift legislative initiative now. Tomorrow, we amplify this demand towards von der Leyen and the European institutions, together with MEPs, the ETUC, and other European unions. Colleagues, be ready. Getting this change will not only generate a leap for collective bargaining, the lowest paid will benefit in particular. Europa will not rest until we get this change to EU law. When we talk about a 90% target for collective bargaining coverage, this immediately pushes our work on multinational companies center stage, the third dimension of forward through collective bargaining. The aim cannot be reached without these companies effectively having 100% coverage throughout their operations. For our snapshot report, we therefore surveyed key multinational companies that have a global framework agreement with UNI. The result was varied, indicating the many challenges for collective bargaining also on the side of employers. Yet the survey showed, too, there is a clear path forward. Our plan is to engage with our multinationals, but also sectoral social partners to push together towards a 90% coverage. To put it simple, our demand to multinational companies is an active commitment, champion and engage in collective bargaining at all levels and wherever they operate. Ourselves, we will better coordinate our work in multinational companies, not least through our trade union alliances and European Works Councils. A key purpose is to use these European structures to create a negotiating environment for our affiliates nationally. EWCs and trade union alliances create push and pull effects by putting issues on the agenda locally and interlinking workforces across borders. As the example of the Czech finance industry shows, with European-wide support, our affiliates, a union can rally multinational banks to engage rather than leave sectoral collective bargaining. Together, we are strong. This is more than necessary if we look at the biggest challenger we all face, Amazon. You might remember Star Trek and the Borgs.
We are Borg. You will be assimilated.
Resistance is futile. I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life.
Amazon is like the Borgs. Today, Amazon tells us you will be Amazonized. Resistance is futile. Amazon sees workers as robots, as extensions of its algorithms. It wants to integrate all of us into its business model, workers, competitors, and societies. Today, it is already a major player across many services sectors. Europa is on the front line. Together with our affiliates, unions, consumers, civil society, governments, and even companies, we are tackling Amazon worldwide through organizing industrial action and corporate campaigning. Through lobbying for closing the loopholes Amazon uses to gain unfair competitive advantage. And if Amazon is too big to be regulated, it should be split up. It is as simple as that. On Thursday, our colleagues will tell us about their fights. They will show us that Amazon can be forced to the bargaining table. Indeed, our response to Amazon is, you will be Europeanized. Resistance is futile. Colleagues, the world of work in the services is undergoing massive changes, with accelerating speed boosted further by the COVID-19 crisis. We are faced with a twin transition to a climate neutral and digitalized Europe. Collective bargaining is a tried and tested method for mastering transformation and dealing with crisis. Europa, as are our unions, are engaging in the process with our employers, the EU, governments, and civil society. Internally, over the last years, we have looked at particular cutting-edge collective bargaining issues. We started with working time in 2018, culminating into webinars last month. We analyzed the topic of upskilling the self-employed, AI, and restructuring. The purpose is to share the experience of affiliates in how best to address these issues and develop jointly a framework that can help unions in collective bargaining. There's a second purpose too. Such frameworks help us to fine-tune our political demands to the EU institutions. We saw this already with the topic of AI. The hot theme over the coming months will be remote work, both in terms of collective bargaining and politics. With the work done at global level, with Europa's support, we are already on a good way in Uni. Colleagues, one of the rallying points for the trade union movement a century ago was stopping the exploitation of home workers. Often an entire family was working on bad jobs for bad pay. In 1906, the labor movement in Germany opened an exhibition on the plight of these workers. With the public attention generated, it fastens rules that stop the exploitation. You see the similarities, and who knows, a little guy in the corner might do some gig work too. Perhaps not today, but tomorrow. Remote work, AI, and platforms have put us on a very slippery slope back to the 19th century, when workers' rights did not exist, when employers had no obligations but for piecework pay. With the work we are doing on those topics, we are pushing to make sure that laws and collective agreements force business to respect fair pay and working conditions. COVID-19 shows where collective bargaining is strong, people are safer and better able to cope. At European level, Europa has cooperated closely with our employer counterparts in sectoral social dialogues. Together, we have adopted almost 20 joint statements and sector-specific measures on COVID crisis. In multinational companies, we had good cooperation too. Yet the crisis has accelerated restructuring processes and too many managers evade their legal obligations. With our EWCs and trade union alliances, we push for strict enforcement so that workers' representatives are in a position to exercise their consultation and participation rights. The EU and Europe's governments have committed to spend over €1 trillion on their recovery plans. The pandemic calls for massive and lasting shift of public investments to the services sectors. Jointly with the ETUC, we demand that this money is spent on creating jobs, good-paying jobs. Jobs that encourage workers to join unions and be covered by collective agreements. Austerity didn't work last time, so don't even try again. Many of our colleagues have been on the front line of the COVID-19 crisis. Care workers, cleaners, shop workers, and all essential workers, working heroes, have been risking their life to keep our societies going. Suddenly, everyone notices them, realizing without them, society cannot function. No, Boris, not you. But to be blunt, what essential workers need is clapping and cash. Let's honor these essential workers. Let's work for a new social consensus that lifts their pay and working conditions. And by the way, Boris, trade unions will not permit a low-wage, low-regulation Singapore-on-Thames style economy in Britain. Despite Brexit, we are still one Europe and one European trade union movement. Europa is a place where we build solidarity with workers and trade unions throughout Europe, not just in the EU. Europa is not only about Europe. We are the backbone of Global Union, and our strength is that together we are one integrated organization fighting for workers' interests both in Europe and across the globe. The best example, our work on Amazon and due diligence, as well as the Bangladesh Accord. Stronger together in Europe, stronger together with the entire Uni family worldwide. That is our motto. Colleagues, our mission is not only about the workplace. Democracy at work and democracy in society are the two sides of the same coin. We have to make sure everybody knows this by heart. Sectoral collective bargaining is a public good. It is not only about us as trade unions fighting for it. Everybody, governments, parliaments, EU institutions, employers, NGOs, and society at large need to get behind it. Let's all go out there, fight for a level playing field in collective bargaining, in our sectors, in each country, and in Europe. And let's counter all attempts of populists to say democracy doesn't work and that they are the real advocates of workers. No, it is a workers' movement present here today. It is a trade unions. We are the collective voice of workers coming together to have a say. Collective bargaining is an antidote to populism. Collective bargaining is about working life, allowing workers and their families to live in dignity. To sum this all up, colleagues, our key priorities over the next 4 years are first, bottom up, expanding our organizing capacities. Second, top down, ensure that public contracts go only to companies with collective agreements. And third, let's Europeanize Amazon. Resistance is futile. Brothers and sisters, I'm missing you. The Brussels team does. By joining online from all over Europe, we miss the opportunity to be together, to talk to one another across countries and sectors face to face. This is a conference in times of COVID-19. We had a great start this morning and already now a great thanks to our Belgian host unions. Over the next 3 days, we make this conference a rallying point for services workers in Europe. Let's make sure our message is heard loud and clear. Forward through collective bargaining. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Frank has to speak first, yeah.
Auch eine gute Gelegenheit, nochmal auf die interaktive Plattform zu schauen.
Well, that's a good opportunity for you to have a little look at the interactive platform. A lot's been going on, as you can see. So, Jen, can you tell us about what's going on the platform, Jennifer?
keeping an eye on it. And some people have indeed been saying hello. We have Karen Steenbergen, who is from the VNF in the Netherlands, saying that it's a great conference, even though she cannot physically see each other. And the work is especially important when it comes to matters of collective labour agreements and multinationals. Hugh Keaveney is enjoying the conference from Ireland, but a few others, I'm not hearing very many voices. So come on, comrades, this is your chance. I've heard a lot about these loud voices. Make sure you please do use this. Join the conversation. If you're trying to find it, you see this on your home hub page and it's join the conversation, big letters down at the bottom. Over on Twitter, we have our Twitter wall here. We can see that there's a little bit more happening. People using that hashtag UniEuropaFWD or forward. And we see here Unite Services saying it's great to be part of Unite and the union delegation this year. Let's have a good 3 days supporting our brothers and sisters across Europe, the UK and Ireland. So a little bit of action happening, Frank, but I think we could get a lot more. So people, please do keep using those tools and using the hashtag. Back to you.
Ja, danke schön, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Let's go then. Let's use every opportunity for interaction, just as Jen has explained. So thank you, Jen. And now we move on to motion 1A, forwards through collective bargaining. And I give the floor to Erwin de Deen, the chair of the Resolutions Committee, to present their recommendations.
Dear delegates, observers and guests at this very special conference, as president of the Resolution Committee, I would like to thank all the uni affiliates for this opportunity to present to the conference the report of the Resolutions Committee and in fact of the hosting country of the 5th Uni-Europa conference being in Belgium. I will also make some of the introductions throughout the conference sessions in the official languages of Belgium, French, Dutch and German. At the beginning, I would like to thank all our colleagues who have actively participated, sometimes in a very lively but always constructive way in the preparation of this report the last 2 years. This motion, forward through collective bargaining preamble, is proposed by the Executive Committee. This motion sets out the landscape for the rest of the report of the Resolutions Committee. With motion 1A, we set out the key objective of Uni-Europa, namely to reinforce collective bargaining power of our affiliates, especially at sectoral level. The motion further highlights the COVID-19 crisis, the digital revolution and precariousness in the labor market as key challenges that face services workers. The motion underlines that raising the walls between our countries is not a solution for overcoming the key challenges in Europe. Instead, we must aim to build a transnational environment that strengthens and promotes collective bargaining through 3 channels of action that makes Uni-Europa a unique European trade union federation, organizing EU law and policies, and lastly, multinational companies. The Resolutions Committee recommends these motions to be adopted. Thank you very much for your attention.
Vielen Dank, Erwin. Damit ist
Thank you, Erwin. Now I open up the discussion. And we have our first 3 speakers. José María Martínez from Servicios Comisiones Obreras from Spain, Michael Budolfsen from Finansforbundet Denmark, and Emilio Fagnoni from Italy. José María, go ahead, please.
I don't hear nothing.
Yes,
Well, you're welcome. Buenas tardes, compañeras y
Good
compañeros.
afternoon, comrades. From Comisiones Obreras, in particular the Federation of Services, and also the Federation of Citizenship in Spain. I'd like to emphasize how important it is to rebalance collective bargaining in Europe, especially after the labor reforms that were implemented in the context of austerity. They produced an imbalance in the different forces and greater capacity of employers vis-a-vis workers. I think that it's important to reverse the reforms that were implemented in countries in order to reduce labor costs mainly and to deal with the financial crisis. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, where it has been demonstrated that we workers are essential and without labor there is nothing, the distribution, the coverage of collective bargaining is how we're going to build a fairer future. And it's important to fight against inequality, which dissolves democracy. And through collective bargaining, it is the best way to set minimum wages that rebalance and revive equality and provide workers with better tools in order to guarantee a decent life. Collective bargaining goes hand in hand with the setting of minimum wages and is closely linked with new rules in specific areas that enable us to change the main rules of a more general nature. And it's important at a time of deep sea changes on account of the pandemic. It's important that there be a union influence on the way new work is organized, working times, and we have also the ECJ ruling on the work records. It's very important to regulate remote work and the right to disconnect digitally, and it's important to look at and have an impact on everything that is changing in terms of social models on account of digitalization. It's important to regulate digital rights and artificial intelligence as well.
My dear friends, I bring you greetings from Finansforbundet in Denmark. Collective bargaining is a cornerstone of our work. Traditionally, we start organizing members, demand collective agreement in the company, and hopefully we end up with a sectoral collective agreement. Now, looking at the challenges with the new digital companies and startups with few employees and a mix of owners, employees, and freelancers, trade union work in a traditional context is more than difficult. 6 years ago, we saw a potential for a fintech industry in Denmark, and in cooperation with the Bankers Association, we formed Copenhagen Fintech Lab in 2016. In our trade union house, we rented out office space to Copenhagen Fintech and a new startups, and they bought administrative support, and lunch from Finansforbundet. In other words, we have tried to show the fintech companies that trade unions actually can be quite friendly and supportive. Over the years, the lab has grown from 10 to 120 companies, and we started a dialogue with the companies to have them to organize in an employers' organization. This was actually formed in 2020, and we started negotiating a sectoral collective agreement. I'm happy to tell you that earlier this month, we have signed a collective agreement for fintech according to the same framework as in regular finance. Social conditions, trade union work, communication with members, right to competence development are more or less the same. Wage development is to be negotiated locally, but inside the same financial frame as in banking. We are quite proud of this. 6 years of focused work with the fintech sector has resulted in both proper working conditions for the employees and ensured that fintech and traditional banking will compete on even terms and not through lowering workers' rights. The time here doesn't allow for deeper presentation, but you are, of course, always welcome to contact us if you should want further information. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you for letting me be here. Have a good conference. Thank you.
Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon, everybody. Dear delegates that are taking part to the Congress, after more than 1 year of this pandemic, Europe has to kick off again, and it has to start again with the work. That's why collective bargaining must be our working platform for the next 4 years. It has to be concrete and firm commitment. Better working conditions, and it's the best way to get out of the poverty conditions. Notwithstanding the improvement of financial results in Europe, many workers in Europe are threatened in terms of their salaries, and their conditions and their salaries are threatened. The salary quota in the EU has decreased from the beginning of the crisis without showing any particular recovery sign. Almost all member states are reporting a decrease of the application of the collective bargaining from the beginning of this financial crisis. Salary increases are necessary to provide workers part of the wealth that they have created themselves, so they can have a decent salary, and discrepancies and differences amongst countries can be eliminated. There's no financial justice without collective bargaining. There's no working equity without the same, and there's no market social economy when workers don't have the power to negotiate when they want to. The main tool that we can have to improve salaries and working conditions and to tackle differences must be collective bargaining, especially sectorial collective bargaining. Fair minimum salaries will be possible only in markets in those there is a vibrant collective bargaining activity, which increases the salary framework. That's why it is important to use this legal tool. And it is also important that Europa can foster the social dialogue at the EU level, so that minimum salary in Europe must become a reality for everybody. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Emilio, und vielen Dank.
Thank you very much, Emilio. And thank you to all three speakers. I'd like to congratulate Michael on that collective agreement, the FinTech agreement. It's an important breakthrough and sets a shining example for other countries. So congratulations on that.
Comrades, my name is Madeleine Engnam, and I'm the Vice President for the GS, and I'm responsible for the collective bargaining. I would like to thank Europa, who chose the theme Forward Through Collective Bargaining. This is exactly what we from GS find be the ideal way forward to strengthen the employee's condition on long term. But we need some fundamental measures. Autonomous strong parties, both the trade unions and the employers, are necessary, where the right to organize is guaranteed. Free parties that rule the labor market through national sectoral agreements, where the right to collective bargaining and the right to conflict is guaranteed. This fundamental right is something the European Union should guarantee within the framework of the fundamental basis for trade union and workers' rights. The survival of trade unions and the fundamental basis for a successful collective bargaining is through and thanks to trade unions with many members, trade unions with a strategic economic governance and with a clear statute with a local basis. The European Union should guarantee the infrastructure for the parties. If the European Union can do that, we can take care of the content and the result. To be successful, we must use the structures and the tools that are available. We have, for instance, the right to have European Works Council within the EU. We have to continue on this road down. We should increase the Works Council so they could develop to become a forum for trade union ideas and help to open doors for national trade unions and federations. Through these open doors, we can have organizing campaigns, and these campaigns can structurally make stronger trade unions that can actually support trade unions together with the federations. Concluding, we must go back to the basics for trade unions. We must not lose faith to our main task, to rule the labor market through collective bargaining and build up an organization that has strong economic power. With a lot of members, a good organization, and we must be capable of signing agreements without political involvement. GS, we believe in international solidarity, strong federation on a global and European level. And to us, this is the way forward, the way for all parties on the labor market. We must regain our self-confidence and the member strong and not hand over the problem someone else will solve. We own this possibility to change and improvement. Thank you very much. Someone else will solve.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm Renate Bos. I'm from the FNV in the Netherlands, and I'm a negotiator for the Dutch cleaners. And on behalf of the Dutch cleaners and all other workers in the service economy, I would like to state we very much support the theme of this Uni Europe conference, and we look forward to work together on it with you. And on behalf of the Dutch sorry, I hurt myself. I would like to speak to you on the theme of collective bargaining and procurement, and how we can strengthen the role of collective bargaining pertaining to procurement. And I would like to make 2 points. First, on public procurement and collective labor agreements, and the second point on the cleaner CLA negotiations. I'd like to state in advance that public procurement is a way of preventing favoritism in politics and government. Therefore, procurement on itself is a good thing. It's about spending our tax money wisely. But in practice, procurement has become a revenue model of lowest price competition, and it's important to fight that. That's why unions are on this earth. So first of all, if the government insists on paying the level of wages as collectively agreed upon in the relevant market, then public procurement supports collective bargaining and strengthens the industrial relations system. But if it does not do so, it unleashes pure price competition and sets incentives to undermine the collective bargaining system. If a member state only sets the CLA standard for the main contractor and not for subcontractors down the chain, then an enormous loophole is created both for the contractor and the state, and an enormous disincentive for collective bargaining is created. So indeed, no public contracts without a CLA, also down the chain of subcontracting. And then my second point, over the last 8 years, we've seen a good development in the cleaning sector in the Netherlands. More and more city administrations and the Dutch government have stopped tendering for cleaning services, but are hiring the cleaners themselves and make them part of the civil service corps. I think we've almost forgotten that it is possible in public sectors, but even more in private sectors. And this is the best thing that can happen to the cleaners in their working life. No more uncertainty about the next tender and the next employer, no more being part of a revenue model of lowest price competition. So we start new CLA negotiations after the summer, and part of our demands will be to formulate minimum requirements in tenders and make them part of the collective labor agreement. For instance, maximum square foot per cleaner, minimum hourly rates, maximum span of control for supervisors, and
Ja, vielen Dank, Renate. Mir
Thank you
liegen
very much, Renata. We have two more speakers. First of all, Henrik Waldik from Unionen, Sweden, and then Antti Hakala from Pro, Finland. Henrik, go ahead.
Ärade fackliga kollegor, gamla...
Dear trade union colleagues, all the new friends, my name is Henrik Waldik and I'm a delegate for Unionen in Sweden. I would really like to thank you for the possibility to talk here about the collective bargaining and the model and its status in Sweden. It's a very central issue to improve the trade union strength in this century. White-collar workers are faced with big challenges now: artificial intelligence, automatizations, computer governance, and the gig economy are big issues. Change can actually be positive because we can identify many examples of how this technical development has led to improvements for the labor market and for the employees. We tend to say that we should not be afraid of new technique. We should be afraid of old technique. New technology can lead to more efficient work methods, a better working climate, and a content of your work with more quality. This does not happen automatically, though. Improvements happen if you make good decisions, if you want a new technology to serve the people, not the other way around. The collective bargaining is crucial in this matter on a broad level and also in specific examples. In Sweden, we've signed an agreement with the central parties towards a new agreement on security, transition, and a safe employability. This is necessary in the new time we have on the labor market that we're already living in. At the same time, the collective bargaining model can also include this much debated gig economy. And both us and the Swedish Trade Union for the Transport Workers, we have signed agreement with the employers in our sectors. Thanks to collective agreements, we can work towards digitalization in favor of our members. We can strengthen the improvement of skills. Together, we can work for an improvement to all of us on the labor market. Thank you very much.
Suomen esimerkki siitä, kuinka työnantajat yrittävät romuttaa...
The Finnish example on how the employer tried to destroy the well-functioning labor market system. We gathered together in the Uni-Europa conference in Rome 2016, and there was the attempt to destroy the Finnish labor market model. And with the help of the international support, we managed to stop the new legislation, and we thought then that this would never happen again. But once again, the Finnish labor market model is threatened. And Finns are modest by nature, and therefore we don't want to emphasize how excellent our labor market model is. We rather let our Nordic colleagues to do the bragging, as it's a Nordic model, which has guaranteed the companies to function in a stable and predictable way, given employees wage development that increases their purchasing power, slowed down the rise of the income gaps, and brought working peace. The collective bargaining agreements have a very good coverage in Finland. Employees are very well unionized, so are the employers. Practically all large and mid-sized employers are members of an employers association. We have a long tradition of CBAs, and our oldest one was made in the beginning of the 20th century. And then during the Winter War, the Central Organization for Employers recognized labor unions and their central organization as negotiation partners. Despite the success of our labor market model, some of the Finnish employers have actively campaigned against it for a long time. They've said that our collective agreements are supposedly inflexible, and they insist on local agreements. In reality, our CLAs allow for a multitude of possibilities for making local changes if the employer belongs to an employer association. And we think if we are unionized, it gives both sides support and expertise for making agreements. Our situation has quite rapidly changed for the worse. First, the Finnish forest industries announced at the beginning of October they would stop adhering to national CBAs. Then, in the beginning of February, the fifth largest forestry company in the world announced that they'd stop making CBAs for salaried employees, that is with the trade union Pro, starting 2020. UPM thinks that labor conditions can in future be based on the content of development discussions, one-sidedly decided by the employer. The latest turn came a month ago when Technology Industries of Finland, which is the most important employer organization in the country, informed of a reform how it was going to act. It will found a new employer organization, which then will be deciding of the agreements that are transferred to it. And therefore, companies that want to join the new organization can do it. The others make localized agreements or follow any agreement. Is this an attempt to break and destroy the Finnish labor market model? Yes, there is a real danger that our negotiations will become severely deconstructive, that we will not be able to agree on general wage raises, which will have an effect on the competitiveness of our national economy. And in this situation with the pandemic, we need stability in the labor markets. The development in Finland make it clear we cannot take collective agreements for granted. We cannot lull ourselves into thinking that the current situation would stay as it is without our struggles. We must act together across unions and nationalities, defend now and always our right to negotiate and make CBAs right to defend our members. I wish to thank Uni Europa, Oliver especially, and our sister unions for the support and solidarity you've given to the Finnish unions. We don't give up. We will fight and we'll win. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Antti.
Thank you, Antti. And thank you, Hendrik, for these insights in the local situation and the work that you have undertaken. We wish you every success in reinforcement of collective bargaining and the crafting of collective labor agreements. I don't see any requests for the floor, unless Oliver would like to take the floor.
Frank, I think everything has been really said, and I just want to say it, especially with our Finnish colleague.
Okay.
We have to stick together and make sure that all those companies and governments who try to destroy collective bargaining are defeated. I think that is our common struggle here in Europe. I leave it at this, Frank. Thank you very much.
Ja, vielen Dank, Oliver.
Yes, thanks for that, Oliver. I shall draw this discussion to a close, and we're going to hold a vote on motion 1A. Press on yes if you're in favor, no if you're against, and abstention if you so wish to abstain. So the vote is now open. And while you are voting, I'd like to pop over to Jennifer just to give us a few impressions of what is happening on the platform.
We're seeing a lot of activity, a little bit more since I encouraged everyone last time. We have David Faes, Martin Müller saying hello. They're very delighted to be joining from Vienna and from other places. Quick reminder, since we are having a vote again, go up to your notifications. You will see the vote there. You can tap on it and make your vote known. Don't forget how to do that. That's extremely important, as you only have 2 minutes to get it done. Coming back to the conversation, we are seeing a lot more activity on Twitter. Oliver's speech certainly gained a lot of interest. I think we must have a lot of Star Trek fans out there. There's a lot of sharing about Amazon as the Borg. Gary Leibeck here saying that it is trying to assimilate everyone it considers its workers as an extension of its algorithm. We like these comments. Please keep them coming. Please keep using the hashtag that is UniEuropaFWD. Frank, I'll head back to you because I'm sure we will have the results of that vote coming in just a few seconds.
Ja, vielen Dank, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for this very rapid overview of the platform, our interactive platform. We're going to await the voting results. We should have them very, very soon.
Wo? Ja. Und haben wir Stimmenverhältnisse? Nein. Okay.
Can we see how many people voted in favor or against? Well, there is a result. The motion 1A has been approved. The exact results I'm not aware of, but we'll be letting you know at a later stage. At any rate, the motion has been approved, which sends out a very clear signal indeed. We're going to head for a break, but before we do so, I would like to invite you to the session at 5 p.m. Remind you of it. We're going to be listening to MEP Dennis Radke from the EPP. He's one of the rapporteurs at the Employment Committee. And he's dealing with the very relevant topic of public procurement and the strengthening of collective bargaining. You'll be getting a link in an email inviting you to this side event at 5 p.m. I'm going to show you some of the drawings of Silvia Robertelli. She is depicting, translating into images what we've been saying. Dear comrades, dear colleagues, we'll have a 15-minute break and resume our proceedings at 18 minutes past 3.
Collective bargaining is crucial.